So, welcome to A Walk in the Park with Animal Friends. Today, we are talking all things training and behaviour. So, we have Nat from Joy,
Hello,
our resident behaviourist, who's here to talk to us and really enlighten us on the behaviour journey for dogs. And also Sarah from My Anxious Dog. So, thanks, guys, for coming in. I'll let you introduce yourselves in just a second. So, Nat, let's talk about behaviour first off. So, do you want to introduce yourself and what you do at Joy?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Natalie Light. I am a certificated clinical animal behaviourist.
That's a mouthful.
I know. I've accrued many a letter after my name over the years I've been doing this. So basically what I do for Joy is I kind of head up the training and behaviour team. So we have lots of vets and nurses that have expertise in those areas. And it's my job to, number one, see clients and help them with behaviours that they might be worried about or concerned about with their dogs or cats. And also provide sort of in-house training support for the clinical team.
Okay, fab. Thank you very much. And Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself and what you do at My Anxious Dog?
Yeah, so I'm Sarah from My Anxious Dog, and I created the brand because of my dog Bella. When I got her at 8 weeks old, she was quite a shy and nervous dog, and that's what stemmed me into the world of yellow, really.
Amazing. So we will come back to that in just a minute and your journey about setting up My Dogs in Yellow. But Nat, if we can just come back to you, from a kind of training and behaviour, let's start right back at the basics. So you talked to Sarah about having a puppy and identifying that she was very nervous. But how important is it right at the beginning of a puppy's life to, you know, really look at the basics of training and how can that help then with behaviour?
Yeah, I mean, how long you got? Really, the point I want to put across, and I'm sure Sarah will agree with this, is that there's kind of a general misconception that when you get a puppy, they're this blank canvas and they are going to be happy-go-lucky and, you know, it's up to the training or behaviour knowledge of the client as to how well that dog then develops into adolescence and adulthood. But actually, genetics plays a massive part in that, and dogs like Bella may have already undergone some kind of trauma, whether they've experienced it themselves or whether their mum has. You know, it's all about those genetic influences on behaviour. So I think the key thing from the beginning when you're living with any dog really, whether they're 8 weeks or 8 years, is to have an understanding of canine behaviour so that you can pick up on if they are worried and then have some kind of tools for you to be able to be their advocate and help them through situations so that they don't feel like they're on their own. Because most dogs, when they are anxious or fearful, you know, they've got a few options, but they have teeth as well. And that's most people's worry, isn't it? That their anxious dog is going to be in a situation where they're overwhelmed and they're going to bite someone. Okay. So in terms of prevention and, you know, that not becoming the daily norm, it's really about knowing your dog as an individual. And that comes from, you know, getting quite fluent in body language and knowing what's appropriate, what isn't, the signs that your dog might be getting stressed, what to do in those situations, giving them space, all of the stuff that Sarah's business encompasses.
Goes on about,
really.
Yeah, absolutely. So anxiety in dogs, what kind of different forms? Because you hear a lot about, typically in press as well, around like separation anxiety as one piece, typically driven through COVID, where pups weren't able to socialise as much or weren't left alone, but anxiety is in a number of different forms. Can you just take us through some highlights of some of those key types?
Yeah, sure. So my role as a behaviourist is to kind kind of observe and assess what the emotional motivation might be behind a behaviour.
Yep.
Okay. We do have to be a little bit careful about semantics and terminology.
Yep.
But really, I'm a believer in we shouldn't panic about the wrong use of a word as long as we know what someone else means by it.
Yep.
So, for example, with separation anxiety, we would call that a separation-related behaviour because it could be anxiety-driven, it could be attachment-driven, it could be boredom, it could be all sorts of things about why that dog behaves in a certain way when they're not with their owners or they're home alone.
Yep.
So, if we go back to the meaning of anxiety, it's the anticipation of fear. It's being worried about how a situation or an interaction might play out.
Yep.
And so when we are looking at projects like this, where we're trying to engage the public and other dog owners in understanding anxiety, most of those tend to be a form of social anxiety. So whether the dog is worried about dog-to-dog interactions or people and dog interactions, obviously dogs and people come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, so it could just be about children, it could just be about men with hats on. So the more you know about what your dog is comfortable and happy about and what they're uncomfortable and unhappy about, the easier it is to then work through those kind of anxiety inducing situations, basically.
Absolutely. So Sarah, you live with Bella with us on a day-to-day basis. Do you want to just take us on that journey, how you identified it with Bella, and then what drove you to set up Anxious Dogs?
Yeah, so before I had Bella, I'd never heard of an anxious or a reactive or a sensitive or a shy or fearful dog at all. When we went to view the puppies, we were told that Bella's mum had been separated from the puppies at probably 6 weeks old, and she wasn't really there to be viewed, that she didn't want to. So, and of course, I never knew anything about all this then. She'd had an emergency caesarean birth, and she'd lost one of the pups in that as well. So it started literally from birth.
Right.
And also then at 5 weeks old, she was bitten quite badly in play fighting by one of the pups as well.
Okay.
So when we picked her up at 8 weeks old, she still had like an area that was really sort of looked sore. So it was probably very sore. And that's probably what really did contribute to her anxiety. And then it just stemmed on from there. At the time, obviously, I didn't recognise signs that Bella was showing me. If we went to dog training, anything like that, she would sort of be under my chair or sat very close to me, looking at me, which in training is ideal because that's what they want, teach you. But what I know now was, at the time I thought she loves me.
She's very attentive. Yeah.
But it wasn't. She just was fearful of everything around her and what was going on. So she was always the puppy that held back, didn't really want to engage in anything. And then finally, she was about 8 months old. We were doing flyball training, learning flyball. We were in a park. And her run was this way, and this dog came from nowhere, from the other side of the park, and just hit her sideways, took her out, and had these handbag moments. We say attacks, but some of them are just all noise and to do. But she obviously suffered with some sort of soft tissue damage around the rib area, which I didn't know. So when people then started picking her up or touching her, it hurt. And Bella's a Cocker Spaniel. They're quite clever dogs, and she doesn't seem to forget anything. So she's just then gone on to associate anyone that's going to touch her, it's going to cause her pain. And the problem that I had was she's just a very, very pretty dog, So
I can vouch for that.
So it became a massive, massive problem for me. So.
Yeah, because that's one of the key things, right? Especially Sky can't be in here today, But she is a beautiful dog, and people see her and they just make a beeline for her because they're like, oh, she's lovely. Thankfully, she's not an anxious dog, but she is quite boisterous. So you need to be a little bit careful, because I've had kind of 70-year-old ladies come up and go, aren't you beautiful? And at that point, she's gone, friend, and kind of jumped up and left like muddy paw prints down. And anyway, but it is in that situation though, for you with Bella, it must be life-changing.
It was, yeah. It really did change everything, because you get, like you say, you expect to get this puppy and it's all gorgeous and you're going to do all these lovely things and you're going to go into pubs and cafes, and no. I did to start with, and then once she started reacting to people, I was like, wow, I've got a problem on my hands here.
So, and that is then, I'm assuming, how My Anxious Dog and the hashtag Dogs in Yellow have come about.
So so when she'd done her first proper reaction to someone, and I thought, I think I've got a problem here, because I didn't recognise some of the signs that she was showing me. I spoke to the lady that I'd done my training with, and she told me about using yellow. And I thought, what do you mean using yellow? And she said, if you get a yellow ribbon and put it on your lead. And I was like, okay. So I Googled it. But putting a yellow ribbon on Bella just will make her, she's got she's even cuter. So, but I Googled it and found out what it meant. And it all stemmed from the horse world. If you had a kicking horse, they would put a red ribbon on their tail.
Okay.
So this is where the idea came from, and it came from Australia back in early 2000s, and obviously now is almost global. So, and the reason why why we have yellow is because it's the official warning colour for caution, and it's obviously very visible.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you can notice.
For those people that are listening and not viewing today, the studio is decked out with yellow leads, collars, outfits. Sarah and I are both in bright yellow T-shirts.
I feel very left out, actually. I'm very boring and on brand.
No, absolutely. But you can go and buy them online. So you just need to visit My Anxious Dog's website. But from Bella's perspective, I it must be really challenging. But I love what you're doing with this, because I think the key thing for helping not just you, but for interactions for other dogs, people need to know about this, right? And that's one of the key reasons that we are so happy that you were able to come and join us today, because it is a campaign that we really want to get behind and educate people on. So what are some of the key things that people need to understand if they see either an owner wearing yellow or an anxious dog lead or harness?
Generally, obviously the message is to give that person and that dog some space. Completely ignoring the person, turning around and moving out their way it's just amazing. When people do that, it's just like an amazing feeling. But to show some sort of understanding, because some of these dogs that have these issues have had just the most horrendous time and treatment. And for these people to stick with the dogs and not give them up, they need some consideration and some empathy as well. It's really important as well. Yeah,
because I can imagine actually out on walks, even just from some of the interactions that I've had. So Sky can, in certain areas, be off the lead. She's got really good recall. But if I see another dog on a lead, I will automatically put her on the lead. Not because I necessarily think she's going to run up, but she is an animal with her own mind and won't always respond. So for me, it's just easier, and I go, right, I'll pop them on the lead. That's one of the key things. Now, if I spot somebody in yellow, they might just coincidentally be wearing yellow, I will just take her a different route, because there's plenty of routes. But it's understanding about that space, because like I've heard people say, don't worry, my dog's friendly. I mean, you must have so many examples that people use that really just aren't very helpful.
Yeah. So to people with anxious dogs, don't worry, my dog's friendly means my dog's got no recall.
Yeah.
And there's 11 million dogs now in the UK, according to a PDSA report that was done. And 11% of those people that in the UK didn't have reliable recalls. So that's over 1 million dogs in the UK with an unreliable recall that we have to worry about as well. I obviously don't go to too many places where there's going to be a lot of off-lead dogs.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just think, well, I am entitled to, I am allowed to walk through this park. You know, I only want a couple of metres round me.
Yeah.
You can have the rest of the park, but if you could just let me. But no, some people just like, I want it all. And it gets very difficult then.
Yeah, I can imagine. Have you ever faced any aggression from owners?
A little bit. It's a lot better now, but it's just how you handle it, I think, now. So I try not to be a reactive dog owner.
Okay.
Because you can get a lot of that as well. So I try. And
you leave your muzzle at home.
Yeah. So I try to say to people that Bella's fearful because she was attacked and she suffered pain.
Yeah.
And that's why she's fear. And saying those words are a lot better than saying anything else. So people sort of go, oh, and that sort of takes them back. And trying to explain, I need space. Sometimes people just don't get it. So I just find, or if somebody wants to touch Bella, and we sometimes get that quite a lot, I just say she bites. Yeah. You know, some people don't like that, but I just say she bites, and I turn around and walk off.
Yeah.
I leave people going, but I want to protect Bella. I don't care that you don't like the fact that you can't touch my dog.
Yeah.
So I want to advocate for her and keep her safe.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. And I think what's really interesting, you've talked about a couple of things that could have been some of those triggers for Bella. Now, do you want to just talk us through how, you know, are there situations where it can be brought in from birth, as an example? Can fear be inbred in those situations?
Yeah, completely.
And how common is it?
Yeah, so we've got, most people have probably heard of the nature-nurture debate. You know, how much influence does the external environment have, and how much influence does your genetic blueprint have?
Yep.
And depending on the sort of genetic makeup of the parents, the way that they're brought up, those early experiences, what a puppy has been through in their sort of sensitive period of development, where they are learning about the world and whether it's scary or not. Obviously, Bella may have had an influence from her mum going through a traumatic birthing experience. Then within her sensitive period, she's had a spat with one of her litter mates. So I think it's always easier for us humans to act on something if we understand why. And I can definitely help with that when I'm working with clients. But really, we need to work with the dog in front of us. And you know, understanding more about Bella's past could give us some more information about why she might be feeling that way or acting that way. But we also have to understand that there are limitations to the changes that we can make to her. We can't fundamentally change her personality. We can make her feel safe. We can advocate for her. We can give her the space that she needs. And we can give her choices in social interactions. But you know, no amount of training or behaviour modification will fundamentally change a dog like Bella into Skye.
Yes.
So I think that one of the trickiest things for owners like Sarah is that acceptance. It's almost like a form of grief where you are letting go of all of those things that you thought you were going to have with your dog. You know, the rose-tinted glasses approach to
the
puppies.
butterflies.
You know, And I I think we need to give people a bit of slack about realising that can be blooming hard to accept. Because if you've always had this idea about what dog ownership might be, and the dog that you end up living with, it is not that dog for whatever reason, then you've kind of got a few choices. You grin and bear it, and both of you have your welfare affected in a detrimental way. You find help and find a network and community, like, you know, other dogs in yellow, and get that support where you can talk openly. Or you decide that actually I can't do this, and you know, you end up going down the rehoming route, and there is sort of no shame in any of those things. But what I want to work on is that kind of middle ground, the grin and bear it people, because I think sometimes people aren't aware that there is help out there and that you can improve things and that you can still have a fantastic, enriched life with your dog, even if they are scared of people or dogs. And they might not be able to go off the lead everywhere. You know, there is still some great stuff that you can do. And actually, my personal experience through my clients and my own dogs is that you do end up with this deeper connection a lot of the time, because you understand each other. And there's nothing quite like the feeling of your dog looking at you and going, I know you've got this, and you leaving together. So
because I know when Sky looks at me, she goes, you're my world. And then she'll look at my daughter and go, you're also my world. But I'm assuming with Bella, she looks at you and goes, you are my world, you're my safety. How does that really affect kind of day-to-day life? Because can you go away on holiday?
At the time when it was all unravelling, no. You find that you don't do so many things. I stopped doing classes, I stopped doing so much that you would do with the dog. And then I found a good behaviourist who taught me, you know, some stuff to do and how to... And you can then progress on to doing things that you want to do. She does man trailing, which is perfect for her. She goes and finds a person, and at the end of it, they've got food, which she loves. You know, Bella's really treat orientated. And we've done scent work, we've done agility. So we've worked really hard on her so she can do all those things. But I do have to sit on the end with her. But you know, and she will tolerate another dog once she gets to know them and knows that they're not interested in her, or she's perhaps told them off and then they don't want to know her anymore. Then she can. It is possible, but you do have to have help for that. You definitely have to have help for that.
And you forged your own path together, which is lovely.
Yes.
So we were talking earlier about genetics. Is our behavioural or anxiety challenges, are they predominant in any one particular breed? Is it across the board? How can we bust some myths here?
Oh, good question. So in terms of avoiding having anxious traits within a puppy, if you're puppy shopping, for example, I always say to my clients, look for an environment that best matches what your home environment is. Okay. So I know most people are aware of puppy farms and what they look like, and you know, if you then take one of those dogs there, because isn't it hard to walk away from that situation, then you kind of know what you're up for, don't you? But if you have kids, busy household, you know, mad routine, find a home that the puppies are living in that very similar. You know, if you then go to the back end of nowhere and pick up a puppy that has, you know, lived in the shed, they're going to struggle. Okay. A lot of stuff you're not going to know. You know, Sarah could have done everything absolutely perfectly for Bella, and you don't know until you get home and get to know them. So I really don't want to sound like I'm blaming anyone here at all. really the only blame is to irresponsible breeders that don't look at temperament traits, that do breed from bitches that are stressed, that do use male studs that have aggressive tendencies, but they like the way they look. Okay, so I think,
and I think that's a whole podcast session on its own. There,
completely. So I think if I was to kind of put this in a bit of a nutshell, I would try and find a breed that matches your activity levels and what you like to do. Try and find a breeder that matches your home environment. Above all, look at rescue centres as well. All my dogs are rescues, and I'm a massive rescue advocate. And educate yourself about those behavioural traits, because wouldn't it be interesting to go back to seeing baby Bella?
Absolutely.
And now knowing what you know and go, gosh, I mean, I've had clients before that have taken on the quiet puppy that was in the corner because they thought, oh, well, they look no trouble. They're being cute. They're just entertaining themselves. And actually, me as a behaviourist, I'd walk in and go, that dog's worried. I'll probably take that one home too.
Like you're a project.
Exactly. And the one that was annoying me and hanging off my ponytail would be the one that I would, give to my family for a boisterous, fun pet. Not to say that dogs like Bella aren't fun. Of course they are. But I think that's a skill, and I have worked with thousands of dogs and their people over the years, and I've only ever had one client that has come to me before they got their dog and say, I would love to get a puppy, can you help me find one?
Okay.
They didn't really have a breed in mind, and we went together to find what's going to work, and they've been really successful.
Oh, lovely.
So, but I don't want that to sound like, if you're living with an anxious dog, you can't then have a really fulfilled life, because sometimes it does feel like everything goes a bit small. But, Sarah's example, and I've lived through it as well, once you understand and you accept, you can actually do a lot more. And I just want to pick up on your point about the My Dog is Friendly brigade.
Yes.
So it's a bit of a bugbear of mine. So I completely agree that no dog should be running up to your dog, or people. But I really want to kind of promote a difference between being friendly and being social. Because I would say all of my dogs are social, because they would look at Bella and go, she don't want to say hi. So I think it's a misconception of the owners that their dogs are friendly, because when you walk into a pub, you pretty much ignore everybody else and look for your friend, don't you?
Absolutely.
You don't go around to everybody on the way going, hi, I'm Nat, hi, I'm Nat, hi, I'm Nat. Depends how much Prosecco I've had. So
my husband does.
And there will always be people like that. My husband's like that too. But I think aiming for social dogs is what we need to be doing with puppy classes and all sorts, because there will be dogs like Bella that don't want to say hi, or she might want to say hi, but she just needs a bit more time to say hi. And she will need a dog that can pick up on the more subtle things, so she doesn't have to swear at them for them to go, okay, all right.
As where Sky doesn't have that filter. She absolutely doesn't have that filter, which is, as I was saying earlier, that if I see somebody on the lead, I'll just pop her on the lead. Not because I'm worried about her recall, but just that, she doesn't pick up on some of those subtle, because she is that boisterous. It's a good job she's pretty. She doesn't always pick up on those signals, so it's just making sure that you manage that, and then you're not overwhelming
completely
another dog.
You're doing exactly the responsible thing by knowing your dog. And you go, okay, I know what you're likely to do in this situation, and you're going to embarrass me.
Yes.
So I'm going to put you on the lead. And there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So talking about behaviours and identifying behaviours, what are some of the key things that you need to really understand? What is your dog telling you physically? Because obviously, unfortunately, I would love to be Dr. Dolittle and be able to talk to Sky and every other animal. You'd never see me again. I'd just be gone. But what are those key body language pieces that we should know and understand and be able to pick up on? I know every dog's different, but...
Well, yeah, every dog's different, but they also speak a very similar language. Okay, so I warn everybody here, being, Natty Doolittle is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Because when you learn some of these signs, you suddenly see miserable dogs everywhere.
Oh, no.
And you see people going, yeah, he loves people. And the dog's like, I don't help. But it's really important that we understand them better. So if you want to kind of get your eye in on some of the more subtle body language things, look up the Canine Ladder of Aggression, which was written by a wonderful behaviourist called Kendall Shepherd and has been adopted by the BSAVA. So it's legit. And it sounds scary, but it's really just a list of conflict resolution strategies and ways that dogs will try to solve a conflict in a social interaction, whether that be with another dog or another person.
Okay.
So the reason it's a ladder is because it escalates. So let's think about Bella. With someone like me, that can pick up on those things, she might do something like give me a little flit of eye contact and then look away, lick her lips, her ear carriage and her tail carriage might lower. And again, that's going to differ different breeds. You need to know what's normal for your dog. She might just choose complete avoidance. Okay, and so giving her choice to whether she wants to interact is great. If I don't notice those things and I go straight towards her, she might have to speak a little louder with her body language. So she might then freeze up. She might lie down and show her tummy to say, I'm not a threat, please don't threaten me. That's a really misunderstood behaviour that people will then go, oh, she wants a tummy tickle.
Oh, no.
And whereas actually there's a big difference between a dog that wants a tummy tickle who looks like a floofy, floppy idiot and a dog that's trying to say,
please don't.
I surrender. If that doesn't work still and I'm, touching her, she might need to shout a bit louder. She might growl, she might air snap, and ultimately she might bite me. And then there's different levels of that bite. So the people are often worried about growling and biting. There is so much that happens before that. And if we can pick up on those and remove the dog from that situation or make that situation a little bit easier to cope with, we're not forcing our dogs into a situation where they have to shout about it and swear. And I think dogs that kind of rush through that ladder and go straight to snap and bite have either learnt from being ignored that those other strategies don't work because people don't listen, or dogs don't listen, or there's something medical going on there. Because dogs are fantastic communicators. They are amazing conflict resolvers. It's very costly to get in a fight. It's stressful for Bella. It's she might get injured if she starts swearing at someone. So you've got to realise how desperate these dogs are to communicate when they're then growling and biting. And if we can kind of meet them halfway, because let's face it, dogs are doing most of the heavy lifting with communication with us as humans. If we can try and meet them even halfway and learn some of those little things, the lip licks, the body language, the avoidance, they're going to be safer and happier to live with.
Yeah, and great to understand what that looks like and how to start identifying them. Because as you're saying them, I'm kind of picturing different situations that Sky's been in and gone, oh, actually, crikey, maybe she wasn't so happy in that situation. So thanks for sharing those. I think one of the key things that I would like to talk about today is timelines. So I think being in a real kind of fast-paced, consumer-driven lifestyle, everything, I want it at a touch of a button, I want it resolved now. A challenge with behaviour, I'm assuming, is not going to be a quick thing to work through.
It never stops, does it?
It never stops.
Okay.
And unfortunately, a lot of TV tells us that otherwise. And a lot of the time there are other ethical and welfare issues going on with what's happening behind the cameras there. I think, yeah, we do live in that society where, okay, well, how long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost me? And I think if you do it well and you do it right, you have a sustainable understanding of your dog, and fundamentally you don't then need hand-holding through every aspect of your life. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
you know, once you understand what to
learn
do
yourself, yeah.
And it's not complex. You know, dog behaviour is complex,
Yeah.
but actually how to help them out is not.
Yeah.
Understand what they're saying, give them space, make them feel safe,
Yeah.
give them choices, help them to be resilient so they can bounce back from things that they're scared of. And all of that is the joy of living with dogs. But I would say anyone that's in a rush to kind of train their dog or improve a situation, management's always going to be your key.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you live with a dog that bites your visitors, get them used to being in a room behind a baby gate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then you've solved most of your life problems there.
Yeah.
You know, your dog doesn't have to be with absolutely everyone all the time.
Yeah.
Things like Sarah mentioned, you know, I have to sit on the end at agility. Yeah, I can't untrain myself from those things because when I go into a pub garden, I'm like, right, where's the exit? Where's the other dogs? Where's the child's playground? What's the best table for me?
Yeah.
Even with my dogs that would love to be around all those people, and actually it's to their benefit. I treat all my dogs like they are reactive dogs.
Yeah.
That's speech bubbles there for people that are listening.
Yeah.
And it benefits them because they then know they're safe, really, and that they're not in those situations.
But it just prevents something from occurring, even if they're not reactive, right? Because Sky's not a reactive dog, but there have been situations where we were in a cafe and she had nowhere to go, and another owner come past with their dog and just let the dog walk right up to her, and she reacted at that point. And I wasn't paying attention, but I also probably stupidly thought that people would behave in the same way, i.e. not just let their dog come up, not knowing your dog. And then so I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry, she's never done that before. But then I was actually, after that, I was really annoyed because I was like, why would you just let your dog come straight up without even checking? But so we're talking about obviously ways that you can help an anxious dog. So obviously we've got all of the kit that you've got here. Do you want to talk us through some of the key pieces that we've got to be able to help identify them?
So it started off, the first thing that I designed for Bella was the little dog over there with the keep away.
Yep.
So it was really important for me to have the words keep away on there because a lot of people didn't understand that I need space.
Yeah,
you know,
so it's just on the harness.
Yeah, so that was the little soft harness I done, and just a normal standard lead, and then everything sort of progressed over time. We now do the Y-shaped harness because some people prefer that.
Yep.
It's got a D-ring on the front and the back for the pullers. We've got double-ended training leads.
Yep.
Collars, jumpers, raincoats, but all things, when you accept, I knew that I wanted to use products that I loved for Bella, like when you'd go into a pet shop and you'd see all these lovely pink and purple and blue things. I wanted the same in yellow.
Yeah.
Because that is her, you know, so, and there just wasn't the range and the quality. So yeah, I ended up creating
a range,
my own thing.
Yep.
But I wanted people to love it as well, so that they didn't feel embarrassed about using yellow. It wasn't a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
It comes from love for your dog, and that's how part of our branding is the yellow heart.
Yeah.
So that's where that's come into incorporate it too with the love.
And we just need more people to understand the yellow and why it's so important to give space.
Yeah.
So we've talked about training, how to help them, identifying behaviours, how you can help give them space, identifying them. Are there any other things? What about calming remedies? How helpful are they in these situations?
Well, one thing that I learnt from a friend of mine is that if you have a reaction when out on a walk, it's really important not to worry about going out for another walk that same day. We always think that our dogs need to go out 2-3 times a day.
Yeah.
They don't. That's how we see it. So sometimes you can stay in and play games, do enrichment with them. You know, there is a
mental stimulation. It doesn't all have to be physical.
There is a Don't Walk Your Dog Day, you know, designed for people with dogs that have had bad experiences. You know, you don't have to walk them. So, you know, you can do all sorts of things, games-based training at home. Yeah. So, which also builds up a good relationship with your dog. So, you know, I think that's quite good as well.
Amazing tip
dogs,
there. Yeah.
You know, sometimes the outside world is quite scary for them.
Yeah, really. That recovery time is really important. And most of the dogs, like Bella, that I would work with, I ask them to have traffic light days. So if they've had a reaction or someone's run at them or they've had visitors, it's been a busy day, that's a red light day. The next day needs to be green. So home, scent work, chill, cuddles. And we don't need to get back into that situation. It's important that those stress hormones are given a chance to get back to, you know, homeostasis, and that you're not then going to create longer term problems with your dog losing trust in you on a walk because of the bad situations that they keep experiencing. Great advice, that decompression time. And there are lots of things on the market, you know, over-the-counter type stuff, which has varying degrees of peer-reviewed research to back it up. You can go down the herbal route, you can go down the pheromonal route. But if you are at a stage where you're struggling to get your dog out on a walk, or you don't feel that they're safe around, you know, visitors or members of the family, then I would say please speak to a behaviourist through your vet, so that they are someone that has the understanding of what prescription medications might be able to help, and that you're not falling into the hands of someone that might use aversive methods to try and solve anxiety, which is not the way forward. Flooding will make things worse. Using fear to try and solve fear will make things worse.
So you touched on flooding there. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, of course. So flooding is, the best way to explain it is, you know, throwing you in at the deep end. Okay. So let's say that you had a bit of a prang in your car and you're worried to drive it the next day. A flooding example would be that I would get you in the car and we'd go on the motorway. Okay. The difference with and some like human counsellors do use flooding, but the difference is that you as a patient would ring up that professional and say, I need some help with a phobia. Can you help me? There's a choice. Our dogs don't have a choice. And so they're constantly really being flooded anyway, because we expect them to adapt to all the weird and wonderful things that come with living in a sort of human-centric society. But flooding would be, you would see behaviours like shutting down. So I often hear this story of, if we bump into one person on the street, they bark, 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 bark. When I walk down the high street, they're completely silent. So why is that? It's like they can cope with more when there's more,
right?
You know, and people will often fall into the trap of then trying to sort of socialise their dogs in those environments, but actually what you're doing is you're putting them in situations that they just cannot cope with, and there's too much stimulus for them to react to, so they just shut down.
So if something like that occurs, what is the best thing to do with them? Should you talk to them? Should you stroke them? What's the best thing to help them in a situation like that? If you have seen it, other than maybe remove them from that situation, but what are the kind of things that you could do? Have you noticed that with Bella?
Yeah, sometimes you obviously have to do some things. We go away a lot in our camper vans, so sometimes you do want to go into a cafe or a pub or something, but I do the same thing as you, right? Where's the table? Where are we going to go?
Yeah.
But she's muzzle trained.
Yeah.
And in busy places like that, she also wears a yellow one as well, so you can really see it. But with Bella, I use like food. I've got like a squeezy reward thing that I put like yogurts or peanut butter mixed in with yogurt or something yummy that's
high value treats,
and or sausage and I reward her, and she goes with that. That works well with Bella, but I have to then make sure that she's in a situation where she will be calm in a busy place and she's okay. And if not, we just have to leave.
Yeah.
You know, if there's too many dogs running around or too many children, to keep her safe, we just have to, we'd leave. So.
And that's when the squeezy treats can come in handy as well, because then you're avoiding that situation like you had with Sky.
Yeah.
So I think that dog could have been bogging Sky out all the way from their seat. So the issue wasn't when they were face to face. It had started already. So it's really important for dogs like Bella that when you get up and leave, one, you've got a shorter route because you've chosen your table well, but also that you're just keeping her busy so that she's not then worrying about what's
going on around.
I think the use of food with dogs that can bark, growl, whatever, there's again a massive misconception out there that you could inadvertently reinforce that behaviour. But this is the difference between training and behaviour work. Okay, so training in general, there's lots of nuance here, but go with me. Training is about operant acts, okay? It's what your body is doing. Behaviour work is about classical conditioning, how your body is feeling. So if I was upset, or I was a bit nervous about today, or I, had a bad drive, and you said to me, oh, come on, Nat, come and sit down and have a cup of tea and a biscuit before we get started. Yeah. Are you going to reinforce my nervousness and fear? Or are you actually comforting me and making me feel more pleasurable about the situation? Yeah. So I think what's happened is the general dog owning population have taken some of the training aspects and ignore the bad, reward the good, and maybe thought that in behaviour work that's what you do too. And we can end up with owners that don't know what to do when their dogs are barking because they're too worried to give them food to distract them and try to comfort them because they're worried about reinforcing the barking. Because
it's a real challenge, because even just to get Sky to jump into the boot of the car where she sits, one day she decided she didn't want to go out there, so I used a treat to do it. Now she will not get in the car without a treat. So she's not stupid. She goes, well, if I hang around long enough, Mum will lose it and give me a treat to make sure that I get in the car quick enough.
The thing is that a big issue? Okay, so
no, she's just clever in that way.
Yeah, if she's definitely comfortable jumping in the car, and you've used food one day because you were in a hurry, you've basically got a delivery of the reinforcer issue, not a dog training issue, because you've bribed her. You've gone, look, get in, I'm late, okay? And now she's going, well, I'm going to make you late every day until I get that again, thank you very much. So if we were going back to basics with the training, and again, she was entirely comfortable with jumping in, there wasn't any other, wonderful things, then we would encourage her up, reward her once she'd done the behaviour. Okay. But at the end of the day, do you really care if you've got to give her a biscuit to get in the car? Is it a big deal? You get into these kind of battles where I think people think they're going to lose out and lose power over their dog if they just go for an easy life.
No.
Okay? Actually, if you're struggling to get in the car and actually following a bit of chicken because I'm in a rush is going to help, do it.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
let's not worry too much about the kind of potential fallout of that, because there really isn't any. She gets a treat, you get to go off on time.
Yeah, and the best thing is now Charlie, her best friend, my mum's dog, he's between 12 and 14. He's a rescue. He now thinks that this is the best thing ever because he's like, I get in the car and I get a treat. This is amazing. So, but he's now got this expectation every time he gets in the car as well. He's like, where's my food?
Yeah.
Just shows how clever they are.
Yeah.
I love that face. Like, well, what you got?
Yeah, exactly.
I might do, I might not.
So we talked about human behaviour there. How much do dogs feed off what we're feeling and what we're experiencing? And how does that trigger some behaviours or not?
I think the jury's out in terms of research on the actual effect of our stress hormones, okay? But if we kind of extrapolate the data from the amazing dogs that can sniff out when someone's about to have an epileptic seizure, when they are diabetic and they're going to have a hypo or a hyper, all of those things that dogs can detect. I mean, medical detection dogs are doing work on detecting all types of cancers at the moment with something like 99.1% accuracy.
Yeah,
so,
insane.
They're amazing. And so if we look at that, pretty much, I would say my dog can smell when I'm stressed. Okay, but it's not really there yet. And I would say that the biggest thing that I see is when people get stressed, they get flustered and they fall into flustery habits with their lead handling and what to do. So the biggest thing that I work with my clients to do is have a protocol of, okay, something's hit the fan. I'm either going to do protocol A or protocol B. One is I'm going to hold my dog and stay still and feed them, or B is I'm going to get out of here. Okay, and once you have gone through the motions and you've got those motor patterns down, even as simple as a U-turn, you just fall into it. So it's just about practicing. Otherwise you're likely to sort of just stand there and your dog is going to go, well, you haven't got my back. I'll deal with it. And, then we end up in those situations. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and as well, a lot of people as well, if they've got a reactive or anxious dog, will shout or hold their hand up. And to me, that's a signal to Bella. Before the yellow was probably a little bit, because nobody knew.
How do you keep them away at a distance?
It is natural to feel worried about those things. I'm not saying, it's just... I guess it's doing that swan thing, isn't it? Paddling like mad underneath, but keeping it nice and calm.
But having those coping strategies means that you've got an idea of what you want to do rather than then having to necessarily thinking on the spot. So have you implemented coping strategies for Bella when you're out in different situations?
Yes, and I found when I started using the yellow, once I'd got over the initial shock of, this is what's going on, it took my anxiety of being out and about down, because everybody could see. So the signals that Bella is communicating, people didn't understand. So I felt like it was her voice in the product. And yes, we've learned about doing U-turns and crossing the road and all those types, putting treats down on the floor so that they go, oh, what's she got around there, or something like that. But I definitely found that using the yellow made me feel much less stressful because I was saying to everybody.
I mean, and I love the way that you just described that the yellow gives Bella her voice of saying, I need space, please don't approach, don't touch. When you think of it in that way, because when we were talking about the behaviours and identifying the body languages, people aren't always going to be up on that, and when they progress through that ladder, it's not until they're like pretty much at the top of that ladder that you go, oh crikey, they're really unhappy. So being able to prevent that from happening and just giving that real visibility from, you know, almost a mile away. I mean, these t-shirts can be seen pretty much from space, I reckon, because they're lovely and bright.
Got a little glow going on.
But I think that's such a lovely way to describe it.
Yeah, and also as well, we went away a few weeks ago, and my husband forgot to put the lead in the car. So we're walking around this quiet town.
Yeah.
But I only had I borrowed it off my friend that we were staying with, a normal lead. And I was on tender hooks because to me, we look like normal people, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, I felt really, really vulnerable. It was really peculiar.
So did you revert back to the stay back?
No, I didn't. No. But I did sort of make a point of, you know, avoiding, you know, people, and let's not walk through the high street for too long. It was quite quiet, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, I felt really, really different. You know, I had to write a whole social blog post about it. You know? It was really enlightening for me.
Yeah.
Because I always use the yellow, because Bella's always.
So basically you've gone through your own classical conditioning process of feeling safer when you're in yellow, and when you're not, you don't. So if you do it right with your dogs, they're going to feel the same way about the equipment. So if a dog that has previously been flooded or put in situations they're overwhelmed with, and then someone learns about this project and they get the anxious harness, and then they're safe from then on, the dog's going to feel exactly the same way you do. We learn in the same way. So
I've had a few people actually comment on the Y harness there, that it's, you know, because you can get these anxious wraps, can't you? And they didn't know whether it sort of felt the same on the dog, but possibly that the fact that everybody's levels,
because it's like giving them a little hug.
Yeah, and the owner's probably not so stressed out and about.
So I want to just bring us back to one of my little pet peeves about lead etiquette. And not everyone's perfect. Yes, not everyone's perfect, and we know that, you know, there are situations where you can find yourself. I've found myself in with Sky, where I was stood talking to somebody very briefly. Isn't it weird as well? I just want to say this: you always know the dog's name, but you never know the owner's names, right? So I know all the dogs' names in our local walk, but I don't know any of the owners' names. But so I was just briefly talking to somebody, and Sky was off the lead. I hadn't clocked somebody come in with their dog on a lead, but they just approached right in the middle, but they could see the two dogs were off the lead. And then Sky approached without me seeing, and this happened in a flash. I mean, it was so quick. And I was kicking myself because I just literally stopped to say, oh, hi, weather, you know, being completely British at that point. Oh, you know, the rain's been crazy. And in that time, she'd approached the dog, and the dog was, I wouldn't have said anxious, because wasn't displaying any signs that I would pick up as anxious. Tail was wagging, head was up, you know, the tail was up, you know, no licking of the lips or anything like that. But the owner went crazy. And I was like, I'm partly to blame, because I wasn't watching her. It was in a split second. But also at the same time, they walked straight into that situation. There were multiple paths that they could have taken to avoid that, but they didn't. They just walked straight into it. So I'm there going, oh, what, you know, because normally I'm so good about seeing a dog on a lead and I'll just pop her on. But for me, lead etiquette is super important. But you know, from both sides of the fence, not just putting your dog on a lead, but also if you think you've got an anxious dog, about if you can see that happening further up, avoid the situation. But how important for you guys is lead etiquette for people?
Well, obviously it's really important for me.
Yeah.
But also, I'm also aware it's really hard for people that don't know anything about anxious dogs to understand. And so that's why, if you've got an anxious and reactive dog, at least have some yellow somewhere, at least a lead or something, because obviously you can see the lead from a distance being yellow, and make it easier for both sides, you know, because sometimes these things do happen in a split second, and most of it is not intended in a nasty way how people can take it. It's just life. So I think lead etiquette is really, really important. And again, we've got awareness days now for keeping your dog on a lead and things like that, but the stories behind it. But I think as a person with an anxious and reactive dog, if I want somebody to stay away from Bella, I need to help and address that with my yellow.
Yeah.
I can't expect people with a blue or a black lead I know they're on the lead and that's there, but if you have a really anxious one, then I think it's really important to use even a little bit of yellow.
Yeah. That's great advice. Nat, anything from you on
I think really good point. What do we mean by lead etiquette? I guess it's just general etiquette, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of my pet peeves is people throwing toys for their dog to chase towards where me and my dogs are having a chill time.
Yeah, a ball.
Yeah, and you're like, you've got the whole park. Why have you thrown it right here?
Yeah. Because Sky will chase, and she'll be go, "That's my ball."
Yeah. And it's just a recipe for disaster. But I think the thing I love about behaviour, and I am a self-confessed behaviour geek, is that it does make you slow down. Going back to your point about timescales, and so I am always watching my dogs and interactions, and so as well as having a decent recall, I can see if a dog doesn't want to say hi and I can call them back. So I think so you can avoid those situations, and I know you were kicking yourself afterwards. We all have those, that's life. But in general, if I'm not watching my dog, I put them on the lead. And then at least I'm kind of managing that situation. And that goes to when I'm picking up their poo as well. Because how many times have you been distracted picking up the poo, and then you get back up and you're like, where's he gone? And he's chasing the border collie that's chasing a ball. So in general, if someone stops and asks me for directions or has, a very British chat about the weather, then it's, okay, come here, clip you on. My attention is not on you at the moment, so I'm just going to keep you here.
So you're just stopping any situation occurring because you're going, okay, little forethought. Just pop them on the lead.
Just put them on the lead. Or if you've got that kind of training, come over here and lie down, please. Just wait there. And then, if another dog comes over, I can kind of assess that. But I'm aware that I have a very different level of being able to read body language.
Superpower.
I don't know about that. Curse. I'm not getting it perfect because the dogs don't know what they're going to talk to each other about either. And it can be okay until it's not. So and I tend to go through life giving people the benefit of the doubt. That lady might have been bowled over by a pointer the day before. So she might have just... Which
wouldn't be unlikely, knowing pointers.
So you never know what... someone might have just died. So I think sometimes we are bearing the brunt of someone else's grief and bad day. And the way I go around that is when my dogs have a nice interaction, or I see someone in yellow, or their dogs both of our dogs look up and go, no thanks, not today. I always say, hi, lovely dog. And it kind of puts you in a better frame of mind rather than blaming, oh God, why don't they put their dogs on a lead and all that kind of stuff.
But that's frustrating though, because so Charlie, my mum's dog, the rescue, he is a runner. So he was a stray, and he's never got away from that. So he is on a lead, and sometimes people see Sky off lead, him on lead, and I'm like, it's okay, he's only on a lead because he's a runner, it's fine. But you do see some people stop and check. Other people just go, I'm just going to let my dog walk up, no problem at all. They didn't check, and I'm like, well, you didn't know if he was nervous or not. If there's one thing I think we want listeners to take away from today, is really look into that lead etiquette. What is the best things to do, and definitely if you see a yellow lead or a yellow top or a yellow harness, do absolutely give that dog extra space. But on the socialization piece, Nat, how do you approach an owner and their dog if you want to say hello? What's the best way to go about that?
So if I'm just out general in public walking dogs, and I would. So this would be the best case scenario for an interaction. Okay, I would keep my distance to start with. See if I can catch their eye. Watch their dogs. Are they like Sarah, looking down and leaving?
Yep.
I'd go, okay,
come back.
Not today. Bye. Might say a good morning. Because you can read a lot from someone's body language as well.
Yep.
If they are on their phone and they're using a ball chucker to exercise their dog 2 minutes from their car.
Yep.
That's probably not a dog for my dogs to interact with either, because they're not saying a language, they're just raving. They're like, yes, ball.
Yeah.
So I'd suss it out, really, and keep it moving.
Yep.
The worst thing I see, and when conflict is more likely to happen, is when the dogs don't have an out.
Yes.
So when you see groups of people in the middle of the park and all the dogs running around, and the people get sucked into a conversation, usually about the weather, that's when things go wrong, because they're not watching the dogs. And they may not understand what they're seeing with the dogs, but always keep walking.
Yeah.
And don't get drawn into, pretty much every dog walker I meet, they'll stop. Oh, hi, how are you?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just keep walking. And I am confident
good, thanks,
enough.
bye.
I am confident enough to keep it walking.
Yeah.
And if the dogs are getting on, would you like to walk with me?
Yeah.
But what my job is to give my dogs a way of getting away from that dog if they don't want to, getting away from that person if they don't want to interact with them. And giving them the choice, because if I'm stuck in the middle with loads of other people and I'm their safe space, which is what I want them to feel, they're not going to leave that in order to get out of a situation.
Yeah.
It's the same as kids in a playground. If I took my niece to a playground and it was all 10-year-old boys that were skateboarding and jumping around, I'm not just going to go, go on then, in you go.
Yeah, off you go. Yeah.
And then
Good luck.
not keep an eye on her. I'd go, should we go somewhere else?
Yeah.
Or we'll play over here.
Yeah.
And we need to do the same for our dogs, really.
No, and I love that. And do you know what? I could talk about this topic for days, I reckon. It's been hugely insightful. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your stories, educating people about Dogs in Yellow and what it means and the space, and Nat for sharing your experience as well. If there was one key thing, let's come to you, Sarah. If there was one key thing that you want listeners to take away with you, with them today, what would that one thing be?
One thing.
Yeah.
Not to judge. Dog
Nice.
Yellow.
Yeah. Perfect. Right, that's all we've got time for today, but it has been amazing chatting to you both. Thank you so much for coming on A Walk in the Park with our animal friends.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you to all of our listeners. You can find out news about our podcast on our Instagram or TikTok handles, which is at Animal Friends Insurance, or on our Facebook page at Animal Friends Pet Insurance.